Hello Internet, I'm Hazel and today I'm going to be going over what we know about balanced druids in Legion. We'll take a look at the original preview blog post, spell changes and removals, the new talent tree, and the artifact weapon traits. The full original blog post by Blizzard is linked in the description below this video. In the blog post, Blizzard talks about how part of the fantasy of being a druid was in shapeshifting and being a true hybrid, but the old design was kinda clunky and overwhelming. In Legion, they're introducing a new row of affinity talents that cleans up your hybrid utility. Essentially, you pick an off-spec from one of the 3 remaining druid specs to gain a powerful passive and some extra abilities from. For example, choosing Feral Affinity gives you extra movement speed at all times and some cat damage abilities. They also talk about replacing the Warlords Eclipse Bar with a new Astral Power resource, which you build with Solar Wrath and Lunar Strike and then spend on Starsurges and Starfalls. Let's start by going over changes to the spells that we're keeping. Moonfire and Sunfire now each have their own buttons again. Moonfire does initial damage and then periodic damage over 12 seconds, down from 40. It's also usable in bear form should you ever need to shoot lasers as a bear. Sunfire applies an 8-second dot to all targets within 5 yards. A big part of balanced gameplay is going to be managing these 2 dots and keeping them up on all targets. Wrath is now called Solar Wrath, just in case you weren't sure what you were mad about. It has a 1.5-second cast, does damage, and generates 6 Astral Power. Starfire has been renamed to Lunar Strike. It has a 2.5-second cast, generates 10 Astral Power, and cleaves to all enemies within 5 yards. Starsurge is still instant, no longer has a cooldown, does heavy damage, and consumes 40 Astral Power. It gives you 1 stack each of Lunar and Solar Empowerments, which buffs the next Lunar Strike or Solar Wrath by 30% respectively. You can have up to 3 stacks of each empowerment. Starfall consumes 60 Astral Power and does damage to enemies within a targeted location over 8 seconds. Enemies standing in Starfall take 30% extra damage from your dots. If you still manage to pull extra trash with this, it's going to be entirely your fault this time. According to a tweet from Warcraft devs, it should have a pretty good sized radius. Celestial Alignment has been redesigned to complement the new resource system. It's still a 3-minute cooldown and buffs the damage of your spells by 30% for 15 seconds. Additionally, your Lunar Strike and Solar Wrath will generate 50% extra Astral Power while Celestial Alignment is active. Astral Communion and Shooting Stars have both been redesigned and moved to the talent tree. Cyclone has been moved to the PvP talent tree. Bear form now grants 200% armor and 30% stamina, adjusted from 250% and 20%. Innervate is making a comeback. It's a 3-minute cooldown that infuses a friendly healer with energy, allowing them to cast spells without spending mana for 10 seconds. You're going to make a lot of friends with this. A lot of our spells that used to be baseline are now tied to the affinity talents and are no longer available by default. Shred, Ferocious Bite, Growl, Mangle, Thrash, Frenzied Regeneration, and Rejuvenation are all part of picking an affinity off-spec. We'll dig into that a bit more later. Like it or not, the spellbook is getting cut down. Let's take a moment to grieve or celebrate for our lost buttons. Dash is Feral Druid only, Stampeding Roar is a PvP talent for Feral Druids only, Revive and Mark of the Wild are for Resto Druids only, Hurricane, Soothe, Remove Corruption, and Wild Mushroom are all gone. Astral Showers, Nature's Bounty, and Primal Fury are done for too. The talent tree is also seeing some major cuts. Feline Swiftness, Ysera's Gift, Cenarian Ward, Fairy Swarm, Incapacitating Roar, Ursul's Vortex, Heart of the Wild, Dream of Cenarius, Nature's Vigil, Euphoria, and Balance of Power are all gone from the talent tree in Legion. Next, let's take a look at the Legion talent tree and the choices you'll be making. At level 15, we pick from Force of Nature, Warrior of Elune, and Starlord. Force of Nature is now a 2-minute cooldown that summons 3 trance at once. They'll taunt enemies within a targeted area and attack for 15 seconds. This new addition looks a little bit more like Hearthstone's version of Force of Nature. Interesting. Warrior of Elune is a 45-second cooldown that lets you cast your next 2 Lunar Strikes without a cast time. That should help you catch up on Astral Power if you need to line up with a proc or a burn phase. Starlord causes your Solar Wrath and Lunar Strike to have a 10% reduced cast time whenever they're empowered by Starsurge. Depending on the numbers, there will likely be a default PvE choice on this tier. Force of Nature has the added utility benefit of the taunt, but it's on such a long cooldown that I don't see it making a difference. At level 30, we choose from Renewal, Displacer Beast, and Wild Charge. Renewal is the same as it was in Warlords, but it's odd to see it on a tier with 2 movement talents. Displacer Beast and Wild Charge also haven't changed, and I predict Displacer Beast is still going to be dominant in most situations. At level 45, we choose our affinity. Picking Feral Affinity gives you 15% passive movement speed at all times and grants you access to Shred, Rip, Ferocious Bite, and Swipe. The cat damage won't be much use to you as a Balance Druid, but the movement speed could come in handy during high movement fights or when leveling and running old content. Choosing Guardian Affinity reduces your damage taken by 10% at all times and gives you access to Growl, Mangle, Thrash, Iron Fur, and Frenzied Regeneration. This is going to be a very strong choice for PvP. Restoration Affinity gives you Ysera's Gift, healing you for 3% of your max health every 5 seconds. If you're full on health, a random nearby ally receives the heal instead. You'll also get Rejuvenation, Regrowth, and Swift Mend. Having those heals handy could really help your raid or team out in a tight spot, and Ysera's Gift is pretty strong for a passive heal. I see Restoration Affinity being the strong choice for raiding unless you really don't believe in your tanks. At level 60, we see some familiar CC talents with Mighty Bash, Mass Entanglement, and Typhoon. None of these have changed from their Warlords version. At level 75, we pick from Soul of the Forest, Incarnation Chosen of Elune, and Stellar Flare. Soul of the Forest still increases the damage bonus of your Solar and Lunar Empowerment by 15%, although that means something mildly different now. Incarnation hasn't changed from its Warlords version. Stellar Flare is still a 24-second dot and now consumes 1 stack each of Lunar and Solar Empowerment. This is another row of talents where there's going to be a mathematically correct answer, and it's a bit too soon to tell which yet. At level 90, we choose between Shooting Stars, Astral Communion, and Blessing of the Ancients. Shooting Stars now gives your Moonfire and Sunfire ticks a chance to call down a falling star, which deals damage and generates 5 Astral Power. Astral Communion instantly generates 75 Astral Power on a 1.333 minute cooldown, probably repeating. Blessing of the Ancients activates a passive blessing or swaps to the other one if you have one active. Blessing of Elune increases the Astral Power generated by Solar Wrath and Lunar Strike by 40%. Blessing of Ansha grants you 2 Astral Power every 2.5 seconds. Presumably, you sit in Blessing of Elune when you're building Astral Power with Lunar Strike and Solar Wrath, and then switch when it's time to reapply your dots and cast Starsurges. Swapping triggers a normal global cooldown, so there will probably be a tight rotation to go along with this talent. At level 100, we pick from Collapsing Stars, Stellar Drift, and Nature's Balance. Collapsing Stars is a 2-minute cooldown that burns the target for a ridiculous amount of damage and additional strong damage until your Astral Power is exhausted. It replaces your Celestial Alignment, probably because stacking both would be overpowered as hell. Stellar Drift increases the radius of Starfall by 30% and buffs its damage by 20%. It also lets you cast while moving while you're inside your Starfall, which I can't imagine will happen that often. Nature's Balance causes your Lunar Strikes to extend your Moonfire duration by 6 seconds, and your Solar Wrath to extend your Sunfire by 4 seconds. With your dots having much shorter default durations, this talent might come into play more often than before. For an artifact weapon, Balance Druids will seek out the Scythe of Elune. This mystical artifact was created a millennia ago from the Staff of Elune and a fang from the wolf demigod Guldrin. Basically, a tooth on a stick. In any case, it looks pretty cool. The following are traits you'll unlock as you gain artifact power in Legion. This is absolutely not quite done yet, so expect to see more info come out as development continues. New Moon is a 10-second cooldown that deals instant arcane damage to your current target. It empowers New Moon to become Half Moon, which does the same thing with most likely a different amount of damage. Fun fact, the current icon in use for Half Moon has the name string of Miscellaneous Food Vendor Sliced Peaches. Close enough. Falling Star improves the dot empowerment granted by Starfall by 45%. Dark Side of the Moon buffs the crit chance of Lunar Strike by 10%. Scythe of the Stars buffs the crit damage of Starsurge by 10%. Rejuvenating Innervation causes your Innervate to buff the healing of both you and its target by 50% while active. Power of Guldrin summons the Spirit of Guldrin to bite the target's soul whenever you cast Starsurge. Touch of the Moon gives you a 15% chance whenever you take damage to instantly cast an empowered healing touch on yourself. This has an internal cooldown of 10 seconds. Bladed Feathers increases the armor granted by Moonkin form by 75%. Sunfire Burns buffs your Sunfire damage by 10%. Moon and Stars causes each spell cast during Celestial Alignment to grant a stacking 3% cast speed buff. Not sure how that one plays with the Collapsing Stars talent. Solar Stabbing buffs your Solar Wrath damage by 10% and wins the award for the best artifact trait name ever. Twilight Glow buffs your Moonfire damage by 10%. Moon Craze isn't in yet, and make it a name change once they decide what it is. Empowerment improves the effect of your Lunar and Solar empowerments by 10%. Scion of the Night Sky also isn't in yet, but they're promising us something cool. Finally, Light of the Sun reduces the cooldown of Solar Beam by 3 seconds per target interrupted. And that's what we know so far about Balance Druids in Legion. That and this update to the Moonkin form model. It's the same in spirit, but looks a little less 2005. Players who like walking around as a big chicken have good reason to be happy. Keep an eye on my channel for a separate video detailing the PvP talent tree that Boomkins will get in Legion. Let me know what you think of the Druid changes, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye!